Today we're asking the question, what can your cigar tell you? If your cigar could speak, what would it say? We're going to look at it all the way from the top to the bottom and discern everything we can visually from this cigar. And this is a slobber-free zone. All right, let's inspect the cigar from top to bottom. So one thing I've always been told is that a thicker burn line means less fermentation. A crisp, perfect burn line means that you got just the right amount of fermentation for that wrapper leaf. But I was talking to Class Kellner recently, and we were discussing the mechanics of having a different binder underneath the wrapper and how that can also sometimes create just a little bit of a raised burn line. This one here is pretty dang crisp on the phenomenal Valle Verde from Partagas. Pro tip, get the box pressed Torpedo. Totally different experience. And so sometimes even if you have a wrapper that is perfectly fermented and you have a binder that's just a little bit thicker, it's going to cause that raised burn edge. And next, take a look at the head here. When smoke is coming out of the head, this is another really good sign. This means that proper airflow and combustion is happening in the cigar. Most likely, if you have a cigar that is too tight or plugged in any way, shape, or form, it will not be smoking out the head like a chimney. And what about the ash? I'm not an expert on cigar ash, but I've always been told that white ash means it's got a lot of good minerals in the soil. Darker ash means it doesn't have high mineral content in the soil. I couldn't tell you if it's magnesium or nitrogen or potassium. It's probably potassium. Plants love vitamin K. I've also always heard that tobacco grows in really good soil and really bad soil. It just loves opposite ends of the spectrum. Don't know how true that is. Fact check me on that, please. But the ash is an indicator of the soil content that the tobaccos came from. It just ultimately doesn't matter that much. You can have great tasting tobacco from a low mineral content soil, and you can have great tasting tobacco from high mineral content. And there are also two ways to apply the cap. The Partagas Valle Verde today is using a triple cap. With the triple cap, have the bunch, and then they put the wrapper on it. They complete the cigar. And then they cut out some circles from the wrapper leaf, they use some glue, and they finish it with a triple cap. The other method, though, is to essentially keep using the wrapper leaf, and instead of putting caps on the top, you just keep using a single leaf and they just keep wrapping it around. That method tends to provide a little bit better experience when you cut the cigar. And one last thing, a lot of the cigars that have a triple cap actually began with the flag method. It's not completely done in the flag and cap sense, but it does have the flag tucked in before they finish it with additional caps. Oh, and if your cigar begins to split on you, typically that's because it's either too humid outside or you're smoking too fast. The heat and the humidity kind of work in concert together, and they expand the filler tobaccos and they push the binder out through the wrapper. And remember, you should be able to hold your cigar roughly an inch, inch and a half from the burn line, and it should not be burning your fingers. If it's burning your fingers, most likely you're smoking too hot. And one more thing we should talk about is the density of the cigar. Used to, a lot of folks would feel the cigar, and you remember reviewers back in the day would say, oh, this one had no soft spots, or this one was hard as a rock. A soft spot used to be much more common than it is now. Um, and a lot of times, if you had a cigar that was hard as a rock, it would be deemed as dry. You remember how you used to be able to put it to your ear and squeeze it and give it the squeeze test? And today, cigars are just made differently. And sometimes we get comments as people will write in and say, hey, this cigar is just hard as a rock. I don't want to smoke it. And it's like, guys, give it a cut, enjoy it. It probably will not be plugged. Today, they're just denser. They are able to pack the tobacco in without creating kinks or plugged cigars. And I'll never forget visiting La Isla's factory, and Hostos had this genius idea to put a, a scale on the rolling table. So when you create the bunch, you weigh the cigar and they know exactly how many grams it should be within certain tolerances. But before they put the wrapper leaf on it, they know exactly how the cigar is going to draw. But if you get a cigar and it's hard as a rock in your hands, don't judge it just yet. Give it a cut, see if it draws. If it doesn't draw and you don't have a closed foot, give it another little bit of a chop and pull from it then. There's a really good chance that in today's world, a harder cigar is not a true indication of the draw. Feeling this one right now, it is hard as a rock. And it's unfortunately right in the same spot that most plugged cigars happen, right above the band. But this guy has some serious tension behind it. And it's smoking like a dream.